Hi, everyone, and welcome to this conversation with Oleksandra Matviichuk. Matviichuk is the head of the Center of Civil Liberties, which received the Nobel Peace Prize in 2022, together with Memorial and Belarusian human rights activist Ales Bialatsky. She will speak with me, Arva Hansen. I work in the Norwegian Helsinki Committee at the Documentation and Accountability Hub. Oleksandra, thank you very much for seeing us and welcome.
Thank you for the invitation.
The occasion for this conversation is, of course, 24th of February, and today's date marks 2 terrible and brutal years since the beginning of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. But it is also a 10-year anniversary. It is 10 years since the end of the Revolution of Dignity. It is 10 years since Russia's invasion and occupation and annexation of Crimea. And it is 10 years since the beginning of the war in Donbass. How has Ukrainian civil society been affected by and developed during these 10 plus years?
I'm still lacking the proper words to describe what does it mean to fight and to live during the large-scale war. Because war is a huge disaster. It's ruined everything which you call normal life. Like a possibility to go to work, to meet with your friends in cafe, to hug your beloved ones, to have family dinner. Everything disappeared in one moment. So it's very difficult from the personal point of view, not just from professional point of view, because you lost the control over your life. You have never idea when the next Russian era attack started, and you live in constant fear about your beloved ones, because even if you have not members of your family in Ukraine armed forces fighting for freedom and our human dignity, there is no safe place in Ukraine where you can hide from Russian rocket. So it's now our new normality, and it's very difficult to accept it. But these dramatic times provoke people to express their best features, and the civil society is a bright example. First, I must admit that the size of civil society growed because a lot of people in Ukraine, so-called ordinary people, started to do extraordinary things. And they took responsibility on their own shoulders, and they broke the settlements to provide humanitarian aid. They organized evacuation under Russian fires. They helped people to survive in the dangerous zone. They helped each other in different ways. And very often people sacrifice their lives to save others whom they never met before. And this also shows the strength of civil society and the power of ordinary people, because when large-scale invasion started, not just Putin, but also our international partners thought that Ukraine have no potential to resist to such enormous opposing power and will be occupied in 3 or 4 days. But suddenly it became obvious that ordinary people fighting for their freedom and human dignity are stronger than even the second army in the world.
That is true, and it's very commendable. And I think everyone was taken aback by the sheer unity of the Ukrainian people in those first day of the full-scale invasion. The last time we spoke was in Oslo in December 2022. Then the full-scale invasion had lasted for less than a year. Now it's been going on for 2. From your perspective, how has the war in Ukraine and the international community's view on the war changed since you received the Nobel Peace Prize?
When large-scale invasion started, the civilized world told, let's help Ukraine not to fail. And Ukraine obtained the first weapons to be able to defend ourselves. And first, real sanctions against Russia were introduced into force. And we are extremely grateful because this helped us to survive. But this narrative, it's also an explanation why we was waiting for a first modern tank for more than 1 year. Why last year we had to start a counteroffensive without any modern plane, and we still can't secure Ukrainian sky. why we still haven't get these tools from our international partners. Because there is a huge differences between let's help Ukraine not to fail as a goal and let's help Ukraine to win fast as a goal. And we can practically measure this difference with types of weapons, with speed of decisions and gravity of sanctions. And I strongly believe that the international community is changing this narrative, but this process is going on very, very slow. And the problem is that for Ukrainians, times means different things, because for Ukrainians, the time and all this delay with setting a proper goal is converting in numerous deaths in a battlefield, in numerous deaths in deep rear, in numerous deaths in occupied territories.
Yes, you mentioned the sanctions, and I will return to that in a second. But last year, the Norwegian Parliament announced a large support package for Ukraine. It's called the Nansen program, and over the course of 5 years, Norway will support Ukraine with about 75 billion Norwegian kroners, which is a little bit more than 7 billion US dollars. But there are dangers connected to such large sums of money. Could you mention what you see as the dangers of such support, and how could Norway assure that this money is not misused?
Let me start with definition of Ukrainian victory, because victory for Ukraine is not just means to repeal Russian troops from Ukrainian territory, to restore international order, and to release people who live in occupied Crimea, Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and other temporary occupied regions in Ukraine. Victory for Ukraine also means to succeed in democratic transition of our country, to build the country where the rights of everybody are protected, government is accountable, judiciary is independent, and police do not beat students who are peacefully demonstrating. And this is a very important goal. And when we speak about assistance, they can play essential role to fulfill this goal even during the large-scale war. Because when international donors communicate only with national government, it helps centralization process, which is opposite to the process of decentralization, local democracy, and democratization. And this means that that civil society in a broader meaning, like mayors, city councils, local communities, local business, civil society organizations, has to be an equal partner, how to plan to spend this money, how to elaborate the program, how to implement this program, and how to make civil oversight over this program, like has to be involved in all stages of this process. And that is why I'm very grateful for Norwegian government to invest such a sum of money for Ukrainian recovery. And I encourage Norwegian officials to work with national authorities and with civil societies in all stages of realization of this idea.
Thank you. But you also need to, the one thing is what is going on in Ukraine and what is going on in the West and supporting countries, but we need to talk about Russia as well. Last year, NHC published a report on the sanctions regime, and we found systematic and widespread breaches of the sanctions. We have uncovered that Russia is getting virtually everything that they need to keep on or continue its war of aggression, albeit at a higher cost. And at the same time, it's being reported in various media outlets that Russia's economy is doing well. So my question to you is, how effective do you consider the sanctions to be, or the sanctions regime?
Sanctions can be a very effective tools in this war, because this war have not just military dimension. The economy dimension matters. I'm living in Kiev, and my native cities, like other Ukrainian cities, are constantly being shelled by Russian rockets and Iranian drones. And this is because Russia still have money to produce these rockets and buy those drones. And this means that if we decrease potential of Russian economy to feed this war, it will be a huge success. The problem with sanction as an instrument is that we still lack a proper mechanism to monitor and to punish companies and states who help Russia to bypass the sanctions regime. I was hugely surprised. I know the work of a Norwegian Helsinki Committee and some Norwegian economists who analyze the way how Russia bypasses sanctions, to see so many Western companies in the list who still provide products to Russia, which Russia used for weaponry. And now my colleagues from a NACO committee made a report, and they analyzed the elements of Russian plane, and they found the equipments for more than 70 European countries there. So with this open back door for Russia, it's decrease the effectiveness of sanctions, which we supposed to have. And that means that it's responsibility of international community to establish a proper mechanism of monitoring and to establish a proper punishment for companies and for officials who help Russia to bypass the sanctions.
The last time we spoke, you told me that you looked at the future with optimism, even though you don't think that the path to the future would be easy. Now, with the things that we've just been talking about with sanctions and somewhat lacking support from the West, are you still optimistic about the future? And what is your hope for the future? And perhaps finally, do you have a message that you want to convey to Norwegian society?
I'm optimistic on my nature, but there is some rational ground for my optimism, regardless of the horrible events which are going on in my country and in the worldwide. Because unfortunately, Russia's war against Ukraine is not only horror and human rights violation, which we now observe in the globe. So we happen to live in a very turbulent time where the whole international system of peace and security is collapsing of our eyes. But returning to my source of hope, I know that future is unclear and unguaranteed. This means that with our own efforts in present, we can create future which we want for us and for our children. And this means that we have a huge historical responsibility in such turbulent times to do our best to secure freedom. Because we live in a very interconnected world. And this will be my main messages. The battle of Iranian women for their rights in Iran will define the future of women in Norway and Ukraine as well. We all very interconnected. And this battle, it's a civilizational battle. Because when you look to Russia's war against Ukraine, let's look whose allies of Russia are. Iran provides Russia with drones. Syria voted for Russia in General Assembly of UN. China helped Russia to bypass the sanctions and to import technologies critical to warfare. North Korea sent to Russia more than 1 million artillery shells. So we see how the authoritarian coalition is formed. And this is very different societies and culture. The only common figure which they have, features which they have, is how they see a human being. And all authoritarian regimes deprives people of their rights, freedom, and dignity. And that is why authoritarian regimes always see free world like a threat and always will attack the free world. And this means if authoritarian countries helped each other, we as democracies have to help each other even stronger. Because in our interconnected world, only spread of freedom make our world safer.
Thank you. Oleksandra Matviichuk, I see that time is running out. Thank you again for taking the time to talk to us, that you share your thoughts and your ideas about the present and the future. I sincerely hope that this is the last time that we need to talk about this ongoing war of aggression, and that next year our focus will be on the rebuilding and restoration of Ukraine. Finally, I would like to say thank you to our online audience for joining us on this Saturday. It is possible to read more about the NHC and the work that we do in Ukraine and elsewhere on nhc.no. Please also consider following us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Oleksandra, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation.